Hello, welcome.
Is everybody muted?
Hello.
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 Yeah, you can unmute yourselves. Welcome.
Hi, Fred.
I think Anthony is still.
I see Sean has joined us. Anthony.
I see Fred. Classic Concierge has logged in. Hello, welcome everyone.
Hi, Brenda.
Hello, how are you all?
Fine, how are you?
I'm doing well. Yeah, we were waiting until we had a good group of folks who had logged in here. We are recording this meeting just to let you know. And if you see me looking off to the side as I see people joining, I'm going to try to go ahead and allow them in. So just a little bit of housekeeping for NCA in general. Just a reminder, if you have not gone online to update your information, if you have changed jobs, if you have changed emails, this is just a good time for you to remember to do that. The more information that we have on you, the more we can go ahead and make sure that you're getting the information that you need from us. So, well, I just want to thank everyone, first of all, for taking time out of your evening to join this presentation. This evening, our presentation is Customer Care, Not a Department, but an all-embracing philosophy. And this presentation has been thoughtfully prepared for our group by Dr. George Alexakis. Dr. Alexakis is a professor at Florida Gulf Coast University, which is right here in Florida, not far from where I am right now. And he has published in several areas, including management, leadership, human resources. He also ran a small business, and he has led several international tour groups. Very exciting. But most important, like us, I think that hospitality and the many facets of hospitality are his passion. Now, just a couple of ground rules as we go through this presentation. We are going to allow for questions. However, these questions are going to come from chat. So if you could kindly mute your microphones, and that way we'll make sure that, you know, dogs barking, whatever, that's not going on. We're going to try to keep track of chat. And what we will do is, as questions come up, we are going to try to address them real time. Now, Dr. Alexakis has very graciously said that he will stay on the call afterwards, after his presentation. So if any of you want to ask questions or chat with him afterwards, he's happy to do that. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce to you Dr. Alexakis.
Thank you, Brenda. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to switch to share screen right away so that we can get the party started. Customer care, not a department, but an all-embracing philosophy. I figured the welcome mat was appropriate given the audience and that we're all hospitality-minded people. Brenda went through a bit of my background, but I wanted you to see a little bit more, not much, but just the idea that I'm a trainer, speaker, and consultant to many different organizations, for-profit, not-for-profit, government organizations. I was a business operator in the restaurant, a couple of restaurants and a banquet hall from a young age. And I, of course, have been teaching for a very long time and training in the areas of customer service, communication, management, leadership. I also publish in those same areas. And finally, my educational experience is related, again, all my degrees are essentially related to hospitality. An associate's, a bachelor's, a master's, and a doctorate all relate to hospitality management. I think the most important thing for you would be the fact that I've hired, trained, and developed more than 1,000 people. And that was my full-time job for a number of years, where just hiring people, both in the industry and then later on in education. So today's discussion really centers around the third of these three things: a sense of place, sense of space, and a sense of people. So place is just the natural environment, you know, whether you're a person that works near Niagara Falls or the Caribbean or what have you. Space is the architectural environment, is the human-made environment, what we create to, I guess, augment or somehow make people feel a certain way based on how things are configured and the architecture, the design, the decorations, what have you. But mostly today we're going to talk about people and how people can create a certain mood and environment, an atmosphere. This is a quote from Eckhart Tolle, and I thought it was appropriate given what you folks do for a living. The idea of setting the tone, taking a moment before you assess a situation and you take care of a customer. It's always good to start with a moment of stillness before any activity. So I'm going to count to 10, and you guys can close your eyes or you can keep them open. Okay, here we go. This is a quote I just got this week, but I'm sure you've seen similar ones. The ultimate gift. Yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery, but today's a gift. That's why we call it the present. And so much of the discussion today will be centered around the idea that us being present in what we do as concierges is both a gift to the person in front of us, but even more so to us. The idea of presence can also be looked at from the lens of happiness, which is another area that I research. There isn't any secret to happiness, incidentally. If I were to put it in, I guess, 5 words, here it is: grateful people are happy people, not the other way around. So being happy with what we have. I saw a quote about 2020 not being the year that you get what you want, but rather the year that you're happy with what you have. That was rather interesting. The other thing about being in the hospitality industry, being a hospitalier, if you will, is that the idea of giving service, customer care, it really fights the wandering mind, which really keeps us from being in the present and therefore keeps us from being less happy than we could be. It strengthens relationships when we're in the present. And this kind of focus, strong focus that so many of you in this field already have and can cultivate even more, is also the key to job hunting, career changing, and kind of the vibrational pull of where we need to be, as opposed to forcing things or being too lackadaisical. It's about being right in the middle. I liken it to, you know, chopsticks. If you press too hard, the food goes flying. If you don't press enough, you can't pick up the dumpling or whatever it is that you're eating. So let's go to customer care. I start discussions like this usually with the word philoxenia. Being Greek myself, I can actually read those characters. Philoxenia means love of strangers. And it's interesting, I go there every year now, it seems. And the level of customer care among people, not even in the hospitality industry, is just staggering. I really haven't been to many places that are like that. It's almost like you're treated like family. You're treated like family. An eagerness to show hospitality, that's what philoxenia is about. The love of the stranger. Xeno means stranger. To internalize philoxenia and teach it zealously, whether that's part of your job as a concierge or not. I mean, maybe it's an informal part of your job, but we're all teaching, no matter what we do. And the idea of teaching it not just to the people who might be our direct reports, but to the people around us, including our higher ups. Yes, we can train our higher ups, subtly and carefully, of course, but we can do it. And we should, especially with something like this. More on that later. So how do we create a philoxenic environment? or as they call it in Hawaii, another place known for its hospitality, the aloha spirit. It's, and I think it starts with understanding for each one of us, what is it that we give as hospitaliers? What is it, why should I give? And what's in it for me? What's the benefit? And I think it's important to see how is this self-serving? And it truly is. For starters, when we fix a problem, let's say we either have a service recovery or we enhance an already good time for a wedding party or some people that are in the hospital that we work at, the issue is fixed. Once we take care of it the right way, we take our time, we analyze the situation, we focus on what we should be doing, we do all the steps, and it's done. There's no more hassles, our bosses are happy. So that's one thing. The other thing is raving fans. For about 10 years now, things like TripAdvisor and so many other of these rating systems and online social media have really caused word of mouth to explode in a sense, because even in a place that's a tourist trap, or you would think, is now very concerned about how they're going to treat each and every customer. I'll never forget, I was at the Domo in Milan when I took a group of students with our chef professor at the university, and we're sitting at a restaurant that was kind of in the most touristy place I think of Italy. It's all these fancy stores. They could have charged an arm and a leg, and they didn't. And I asked, I said, your food is great. Your service is even better. What's wrong with you people? You guys could be charging a lot more money. And why is the food so good? And why is the service so good? And he said to me right away, he said, look, people look at those reviews online. And we have repeat customers, believe it or not. People do come here once a year, once every couple of years, in some cases, even more than once a year. And so we're very concerned about these things. And by the way, move your bag closer to you, because I'm not young anymore and I can't chase people they're gonna take it. I mean, he even cared about the bag that I had with me, with clothes or whatever I had in it. Rather interesting. So another thing is strengthening your personal skills. And this is a theme that you're gonna hear throughout this presentation, the idea that this is not just a professional piece, but a personal part as well of our lives, and it can be. And along with that, whether we use customer care principles in our professional life or our personal life, we get better and better each time we do it. There's growth. Much like a tree being pruned, it strengthens the tree. And I think when we practice and we just get better and better, we sharpen the saw, as Stephen Covey says, for those of you who are fans of Covey. And then the one thing I mentioned before is the idea that you stay in the moment. If we're doing our jobs properly and we're really providing a level of service that's beyond just really good service, that we're treating this person like they're a family member, guess what? We're going to be happy as well. I would argue that in some ways we're getting more out of it than the person that's in front of us, because we're in the moment. It's a great feeling not to worry about your bills and your whatever people you got to meet with on Thanksgiving, and talk about politics, whatever it is, right? We're having to do our jobs properly. We have to stay in the moment. We have to be thinking about and anticipating what those needs are, trying to understand what the issue might be, and so on and so forth. And I put down here at the bottom, because so many people right now are either looking for employment or, I mean, I get a lot of phone calls of people like, I just lost my job, I just got furloughed, what have you. They did, I'm work at the March of Dimes. They did away with my job because they're not going to do events for a couple of years. I believe that these principles can also very much lead to your next job. We've all heard of moments of truth, and Tom Peters is famous for talking about these things. It's an emotional tie, not a mere satisfaction, that brings the customer back. And here's the other piece, the emotive piece, the emotional piece. Airbnb, right from the outset, showed this kind of people interacting with strangers in their homes, right? Essentially. Very interesting phenomenon. No one really took it seriously at the beginning, at least in the field of hospitality. But boy, oh boy, They're taking it seriously now because with Airbnb, someone's hosting you in their home. And especially when it first started, and even now, even to this day, the experiences that people come away with are just incredible. Like there are some bad ones too, but for the most part, you hear some really amazing experience. I've had some great experiences with Airbnb, like incredible experiences. But I'll give you an experience. I'll share with you an experience that didn't happen to me, and I'm not going to get it 100% the way it happened. You'll get the gist of it. There was a woman, first week of December, was going to a dog show with her dog, her prize-winning dog, and needed a place to stay. But the first week in December, as we all know, in New York City, is one of the busiest places. I mean, even the outskirts are charging $300 or $400 for a shabby hotel room. Could not find a hotel room anywhere. She waited too long. This is a woman that would never dream of going to someone's home and staying there. And not only that, had to search Airbnb to find someone who was willing to take in the dog as well, right? Pets allowed kind of thing. And she did. Not because she wanted to, because she had to. Well, guess what happened? She became right from the outset got along really well with the lady who was going to be her host. Well, she gets there with a dog. Guess what? The lady has a dog. The two dogs get along perfectly. The experience is so wonderful. That woman will never stay at a hotel ever again because the experience was so wonderful. It's an emotional connection. It's more than just, here's my money, give me my service, give me my hotel room, my food, what have you. Emotional connections. And that's why Airbnb is still killing it and taking more market share every day from the hotel industry, the lodging industry. And COVID, interestingly enough, revealed people's need and their yearning for connection with others. It's fascinating to me how I never predicted this, but I thought people like me who are, kind of type A, very social, extroverted people, I really thought that we'd have a tough time with being isolated and, feel lonely and everything. But the truth is, I haven't felt like that at all. And the people I know that are like me haven't felt that at all. We've, between, among the Zoom calls and the FaceTime calls and the phone calls and everything else, I'm happy as can be. But it's really the type B personalities, about half the population, that isn't wired the same way. They're struggling a lot. There's, rates of depression have gone up, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think more than ever, we've discovered that people really do need to socialize with others, to interact with one another, and that kind of emotional connection. So we talk about service. So what do we mean? We're talking about dynamically communicating, empathic, and emphatic customer care. I mean, the step-by-step stuff you guys know, I am not going to go into that with you, but the idea is to listen actively, emphatically, and listen with empathy, empathetically or empathically, same word. The idea of trying to feel what the other person is feeling at that moment. And sometimes they're angry, which is a secondary emotion, usually covering hurt, disappointment, or something else. And sometimes it's elation. They're just so happy, and we want to increase that level of happiness and really get them to share it with others or what have you. Have them write a review even. So those of us that get it, and I'm sure the people I'm talking to, all of you get it, it's about service, not servitude. In some ways, it's an honor to do what we do. It's wonderful to be of service to other people. And let me tell you, it stays with you regardless of where you go and what you do, and it gives you an edge over all the other people who, even if you leave this industry and go into banking, you have an edge. I can't tell you the kind of things that I see people do in academia, which is my full-time job. None of you would ever do some of those things or treat people some of those ways. It just goes back to bite you. Not to mention, it makes for a terrible day if you're not treating people in the very best way. And that means being warm and friendly, as you know, but in a generous way, communicating in a civil manner, in a kind, clear, non-threatening manner. It's a way about you. The French call it the je ne sais quoi, and it really is a way about us. right? The hospitality people have this, even when we're outside of work, if we buy into the idea that this is our calling, and I think most concierges see it this way, that it extends beyond our workplaces and what we do. For me, it's never left me. I was telling Brenda just the other night that even when I go to a restroom at a restaurant and I'm drying my hands and if it's a bit of a mess or too wet, I'll use some towels and clean up the area. I don't work there. I don't get paid there, but I can't help myself because, my life is about being of service to others because truly that makes me happy. And in fact, Deepak Chopra, a famous spiritual teacher, and others talk about how when we're feeling emotional pain, that the best way to heal it is to help others. And there's research to back that up too. Our next slide, customer care equals self-care, is along these lines. Tom Peters again. When you have a true passion for excellence and when you act on it, you will stand straighter. You will look people in the eye. You will see things happen. You will see heroes created, watch ideas unfold, and take shape. It truly is something special to do what we do. Again, what's in it for me? Being of service to others is one of the best gifts that you can give yourselves. And what we're really talking about here are intrinsic rewards. We're not talking about a starter mansion, a trophy wife, a fancy car. We're not talking about these things. We're talking about things that are intrinsic, meaning internal, inside of us, right? And I think this falls along the same lines of, spiritual things that we might do in our personal lives, volunteering, again, helping others, meditating. These are things that cultivate us internally, and they last a heck of a lot longer in terms of good feelings than a new car, if they're done over and over again. So it's really a broader view of the term customer, which reminds us that service skills can be applied to all aspects of life, and they should, I think. So your commitment to providing service stimulates a personal growth process. And to me, professional growth and professional development translates into personal growth and development, not to mention career growth and development for those of it, because all these skills that I'm talking about now and many more that you all possess are transferable to other industries. I mean, you can't imagine how many people are in hospitality programs now throughout the country that are not even in hospitality. I mean, some of you are in hospitals. I mean, these skills are transferable to other areas. I'm working on a project right now. I'm a consultant for the largest hospitality program in the country. They asked me to come in and look at their master's program. It's an online program, strictly online. And I had Zoom calls last week with the administrators, the faculty, and then I also had a Zoom call with about 6 students in the program. And it was so interesting that the first student that opened his mouth was the vice president of a company that runs 2 huge malls in 2 different states. And he runs these malls. These are outdoor malls. And I asked him about, Amazon.com, which I'm sure everyone else is asking him too. And he said, it's not Amazon that killed retail. It's retailers that killed retail. And he went on about how providing an experiential experience, much like a downtown experience, that's what malls have to do. And that's what his company is doing. That's what he's doing. And that's why they're paying for his master's in hospitality management, right? So what I'm saying to you is that the professional growth is personal growth. And I just heard a sound. Can you guys still see me? Shoot.
Yes, I can still hear you.
Can you guys still hear me? Because I heard a sound and I thought it was my. Can everyone see the screen?
You're back.
You're
Okay.
back. Yeah.
All right.
Good.
All right. I just want to nip that in the bud, folks. I'm talking about service. I got to provide it, right? So, yeah, as I was saying, here's a retail company. See, so your skills as a concierge are transferable to virtually any field. And many fields, not just healthcare straight, but also senior living centers are popping up all over the place over here in Southwest Florida. They're hiring concierges. It's amazing. There's even doctors, concierge doctors in Southwest Florida. They're hiring concierges to do all of the upfront work. Again, a very high level of customer care. What does that lead to? What company name or logo would you tattoo on your body? These are the ones that come to mind here. Apple, Tesla, people who work at Harley Davidson. They've got tattoos of Harley Davidson on their body. One of our alumni, she works at Disney. She, even as early as 2014, when I took her and I guess 28 other students to Italy for a food and wine tour, she had like 3 Mickey Mouse tattoos on her shoulders, her right and left shoulders, or arms, or whatever. It's not what are we all doing wrong when we think of these other companies that aren't making the money or have the success. So what are these folks doing right? I test drove a Tesla, not because I'm going to buy one, but my daughter, who's 14, insisted that I test drive one on Sunday. What an amazing car. Like, it wrecks all other cars for you. It's such a beautiful car. And she was like, Dad, you got to buy this car. I'm like, Dad can't afford this car right now. It'll come in the future. And incredible. In fact, we ended up test driving 2. The lady offered us to but what are these people doing right? It's not just the product, which is excellent, but it's also the service. And I would say the service is almost as important. I think this is my favorite slide for you folks because the key is really a symbol of what you do. The research shows the customers interact with frontline people. They don't interact with CEOs much. If you haven't seen that show Undercover Boss, which has been it's a few, several years old now, I think it may even stop production, but just watch one episode. They're all kind of the same, and you'll get the gist of it. It's incredible how out of touch people are the higher up they go in an organization. But concierges and other people, frontline people, are right there with the customer. However you describe the customer. Your customer could be a patient, a client, whatever word you use for the consumer of your product, service, or idea. If you work on a ship, it's a passenger, whatever. The frontline people are the ones that do the work and are really the gateway for every single customer to that organization. Research shows that guest satisfaction is linked to personal interactions, the theme we've been talking about, the emotional piece, the emotional connection. And people really seek authentic emotional experiences. I'll go back to the touring. So I run these tours not for money, but just for fun. And because I speak Greek, I'm fluently bilingual, and I'm a hotel and tourism professor, I take people to Greece. People want to see Greece, right? I take Americans to Greece. And last year we had Canadians as well. And we saw the Greek islands, and we go to these different places. And yes, of course, we see the postcard views. Without question, we go to the Acropolis. It's one of the first things we do. We went to, Santorini, Mykonos, Santorini, and Crete last year. But the truth is that the reason that these people who go on tour with me want to come back or tell all their friends, yeah, it's great that I speak the language and then I'm a hotel professor. If something goes wrong, I can fix it right away. And it's wonderful that we're going to these. Now, it doesn't matter where you go in Greece, quite honestly. It's equally as beautiful as the next place. It really doesn't matter. The mainland, the islands, it's just an amazing place. All that's fun. All that's great. But the authentic emotional experiences, they occur because when I craft the itinerary, I go beyond the beaten path, right? I go beyond the postcard views. So it's not unusual for our group to be sitting in a restaurant, having a delightful experience with the food. And then at some point, I'm talking to the owner of the restaurant, and him and his wife and his family join us, and it becomes a party that lasts all night. This is, a very common thing, and people love that sort of thing. They don't want to just lie on the beach. They want something more. And I think that's universal now. Times have changed. Well, that first one, how customers interact with the frontline people, this is what I'm talking about here when I'm talking about the goose that lays the golden eggs. The goose is the customer. Who is interacting with the geese? Frontline employees, often the people who get paid the least, work the hardest, and don't get treated with the most respect. But think about how lopsided that is. The people who are literally watching over the gold of pretty much any organization should be always treated as best as possible, should be given whatever's possible in terms of money and respect and everything else. Because their mood, as you all know, as you all well know, is going to dictate the level of service that they give to the customer. And for most organizations, that's where the money comes from, the customer. So service is a philosophy, not a department. It's a mindset. And it can be a calling as well. Service skills are crucial for success at all organizational levels. And as I said before, I think it's important to let higher ups know this slowly, more and more, pushing the service, the customer care agenda so that they buy into it too, that they can devote more resources to it, and they themselves can become this way. Because we all know a lot of the higher ups aren't, depending on the organization. There's one general manager of I won't mention the name, but a very well-known private country club here in Florida, one of the top ones. And unlike a lot of managers of hotels, like GMs of hotels and private clubs like this, he actually, any person that's hired, he will interview at least for 10, 15 minutes. Every single person. It's a large operation too. Most operations that size, the GM wouldn't interview more than a few people a year. This guy interviews everybody. And somewhere in the interview process, during his time with that person, he'll ask them, not exactly like this, but in a more subtle way, would you rather give a gift or receive a gift? And the truth is, the people that I'm speaking to tonight would rather give a gift. Not everyone's cut out to be a hospitalier, someone that can provide a high level of customer care. And those people, unless, it's very difficult to train them. Sometimes you can spin your wheels for years and they just don't get it. And maybe they'd be better off at a cubicle where they're not interacting with customers, quite frankly, and resources spent with other people that have the attitude. You've heard that before, that, have the attitude will train you for everything else. And here are some gifts, different types of gifts that you give your customers, your patrons, what have you, whatever word you use for the consumer of your product, service, or idea. You can give them a free pass, some kind of object, a physical thing. We all know how remembering names is so important with the Dale Carnegie quote. Genuinely and authentically complimenting people. I think that's so important, especially these days. People seem to not have time to notice something special about the other person. I think it's so important. I love it when people do it for me, but I also love doing it with other people. I look for things to say a positive word about. And of course, listening emphatically and empathetically. And if you've got a scratch pad there, you might ask yourself, what are some of the other gifts that we can give people? Like really listening to what they're saying, even if it's not a customer complaint, maybe it's another, a colleague or somebody else, a peer. The bottom line is the acquisition and service of customers is everyone's job. And that's how an organization can go above and beyond and be memorable, like the Apples and the Teslas, who treat you, they don't have a VIPs in those places. They treat everyone like a VIP. Because they have created service cultures where they've enabled their associates to share in the mission, the strategies, the tactics. They come together with these things. You put in a feature request and it happens. They develop service-oriented management styles. So even the managers are there to serve others, and they see their role as a manager, as a leader, to serve others, to help those frontline people, to do whatever it is that they can to have all the tools necessary and create an environment where they have the mindset necessary to give the very, very best customer care, like they're taking care of family in a hospital. And the whole idea of learning, continual learning, lifelong learning, causing service-oriented and communication skills to go up, interaction skills, to become well related to others. The other thing at a higher level, and sometimes people don't think of this, but it's the idea of looking at how do we game things out to make it easy for that frontline person or that concierge to give an exceptional experience. How do we do that? You know, oops, sorry. We do it through the employees themselves, the training, et cetera. But we can also do it through a physical environment. I don't, for the life of me, I don't know why the front desk still exists. Why not a couch with an iPad where you're sitting side by side, playing the music that hotel guest wants as you talk to them, you know, and you know, you have their guest history right in front of you, and ask them if they still want the grapefruit juice chilled, you know, served by room service first thing in the morning like the last time. Like, why can't that happen? It's 2020, for God's sakes. How they interact with other guests, and always reevaluating the organization's products and services, and gaming things out, leading to a high level of satisfaction. And this this is the final slide that I have. This is about feedback with passive guests. This is so important too. We talked about apps and social media and being on top of these things, responding to them when appropriately, but paying attention to what people are saying. You know, some of the best managers I've ever seen weren't necessarily naturally the best, but they always just got feedback from their employees. And getting feedback from guests is really a gift. You spend, you know, this country, I mean, we spend millions upon millions of dollars on consultants like me to come in and tell you what stuff your guests can tell you, right? If you listen to them. Surveys, comment cards. I had my 12-year-old niece a few days ago. She asked me what a comment card was. I thought that was pretty funny. A lot of organizations employ mystery shopping, but you know, there's a cheaper way to do it. Board members can be those mystery shoppers along with family, relatives, and friends. I've done that for people. And of course, anonymous feedback links. And you know, the anonymous is the key word here, right? 1-800 numbers, somewhere they could take a short survey. And of course, employees having the, you know, something more than a suggestion box to improve what's already there, and it also helps employees, I think, keep focused on their work and what's important. And I think that's all we have for this evening. I thought this was a pretty funny cartoon. I shall now open it up to questions.
I'm going to unmute everyone here. So
how many do we have now? We started with a few, but
yeah, we have 14 people. And
oh, there we are.
If we yeah, feel free to unmute yourself, and feel free if you want to add your video as well. Thank you, George. I don't know if anyone has any questions, but for all of the NCA members, I kind of want to challenge you to take what George was talking about and not only put it into what you're doing for work, but how about if we challenge ourselves and put it into NCA? What can we do? How can we volunteer for NCA? How can we bring our gifts to our group to help it grow, to get some more members? You know, maybe start talking to some people that you haven't thought might want to join. I don't know what you guys think about that. Anyone have any ideas?
Well, Brenda, I definitely agree with you. This is Tony Curtis in DC. First, before I comment, I do want to say, George, thank you so much for a wonderful presentation.
My pleasure.
I run a concierge company in the Washington, DC area. And honestly, you are the first person who I've ever heard say some of the things that I've been thinking for a long time, but I've been scared to say them. And first and foremost, when you were basically saying what we do, there's a selfish element to it. And I've never said that because I don't think people would understand that when we are doing something for someone and we are providing a service, as happy as those people are and as grateful as they are for that service, it actually does more for us than it even does for them. And I've never heard someone actually voice that. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. I put a question in the chat room for all of you, and as what from the presentation, much like what was just shared, what from the presentation most resonated with you personally?
I'm going to go ahead and jump in there. Last night, I had a little preview on this. And the first thing that I said is, I need you to come and talk at my work. We are hiring a whole slew of new people now. We're coming into season down here in Florida. Many of you know, maybe some of you don't. I live in Florida, Southwest Florida. And just the excitement from what you're saying, thinking about what you do as a job, and this goes for everyone that I work with, not just the people who share the same title with me, bringing that excitement forward, thinking about what you're doing, thinking about when, like you were saying, George, when people come to you and they're angry, why are they angry? And instead of, being on the defensive, how can you help them, and how can you help them to enjoy the situation? How do you get that good out of a bad situation? And again, it brought me back to NCA. How can we get excited about our group? It's been a hard year for us. We didn't have our educational conference, something we all look forward to. So how do we take this going forward in our new normal and get that excitement back for our group? And I think having you here, George, and this is a big step.
Well, I appreciate that. I would also say that I think you're on the right track about getting new members and in non-traditional areas. I really think that hitting master's programs in hospitality, for instance, even if they're not concierges, being a part of something like this can give them an element or an edge over so many other people, because you're doing something above and beyond. I mean, this is a calling for so many of you. You're doing something at a higher level than most are doing. And a lot of people don't understand it, but I'm all for it. There's most people don't really get involved in associations, but I can tell you it's given me an edge since I was 17 when I first joined the Ontario Restaurant Association. It's given me an edge all the way through my career, and I've had 3 different careers: one in operations, one in consulting, and of course in teaching. So Anthony made a comment about the front desk, loving the idea of eliminating the front desk and using the couch. This is, near the end when I was talking about gaming things out, the idea of gaming things in a way and reimagining things so that it just makes it easier for everybody to provide this awesome experience, like someone's coming into someone's home, and it doesn't matter, what the setting is, a hospital, a private club, what have you. The other thing is Sean made a comment here. If Apple can have employees all around the store, wouldn't it make sense to have hotels do something similar? Let me tell you something. You know how Apple came up with the idea of the way they sequence their people in a store? They actually got training from Ritz-Carlton. Yeah, and that comes from, I learned this from Ed Staros, who used to be the chief operating officer of Ritz-Carlton. And for a number of years, and then he ended up coming down here. This is only one of 2 places in the country that has 2 Ritz-Carltons. We have a Gulf and a Beach Ritz-Carlton, and they're not that distant from each other. And he ran both of them. In other words, he had a hotel manager, and they both for each one, and then he ran them. He just retired January 1. Last year he became, I don't know if you know this, Brenda, he was awarded by Hotels Magazine, hotelier of the world. And then he retired January 1. What a way to go out. But he's our executive in residence at Florida Gulf Coast University, the state university that I work at. And I spoke to him today, and I shared this with Brenda, that he's willing to speak to you folks as well. If at some point in the future, he'd give you a different perspective. Super nice man. And he kind of coached me on concierges when I was talking for this morning. He was telling me about, his awe, like, and how, that concierges still remain one of those things that reminds him of Europe and the classical service. It was really interesting to hear him talk about that. There's another comment here from Matthew. You said everything that I believe and feel about being a concierge and giving 100% great service to everyone, customers and teammates. Yeah, and even people that you meet outside of your shift. When it's amazing. I even use these principles on my daughter, who's 14, thinks she knows everything. I felt like telling her yesterday when she was yelling at me, "Why don't you leave the house, start paying insurance, rent, etc., while you still know everything?" While you still know everything. But I didn't do anything like that. I acted like, I felt proud of myself. I acted like a classical concierge. I just kept my voice low. I used muted tones, what I like to call, I used my spa voice, nice and soft, right? And just looked at her, asked the probing questions, got her thinking, and within 20 or 30 minutes, she was offering me her garlic bread that I had prepared for her. And it was just a turnaround. And it was, I'm not saying that I got there overnight. It's taken a long time to get to that place, as you all know, if you've been around 14-year-old girls or boys for that matter. And I felt like so much of what we do in hospitality, and this whole idea of staying in the moment, which is another thing I've been cultivating on the personal side through meditation, really assisted me at a time yesterday, which allowed my daughter to know that it's safe, it's comfortable for her to yell and scream, and that ultimately I get that she's got hormones going and all kinds of things happening, and that I'm there for her. You know what I mean? It was really a breakthrough for me personally. This happened just yesterday afternoon, before I spoke with Brenda. So I think this really does, these things transfer to every aspect of our lives. Absolutely. But thank you for saying that, Matthew.
I think what was important for me there was teammates. And I take the same attitude that I would with a customer to the people that I work with. I've got the mask on, sorry, I work
That's
in a
okay, we can hear
hospital.
you fine.
So, but that to me is important because sometimes in hospitals, things move notoriously slow.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can interact with my teammates with the same way and give them that level of service, it creates a trust bond and creates a better work environment for me throughout the hospital.
Yeah, and at the very least, it's hard for them to treat you like a jerk when you're treating them so nice. When you're treating them like a patient or a patient's family. You know what I mean? And one other thing I want to mention, since we're on this topic, and I didn't mention in the presentation, but I really want to share this with you. If you want to kind of fast track to that environment of customer care and getting people to gel as in an organization, I usually talk about this in my leadership seminars. A social can be, I mean, it's hard right now because of what, because of COVID, but the idea of breaking bread, food binds, and even people who really kind of don't like each other, if you kind of put them in a situation where they have to do something social, like once a month, you can see those divisions start to kind of fade. It's a very interesting, very powerful tool. And I mean, you guys get it because you're hospitality people, but a lot of people outside of hospitality don't understand. Well, you're going to throw a party, really? They don't even like each other. Well, you know what? Maybe if they had coffee together or breakfast together, what have you, they sometimes can work out their problems on their own, even without the manager there. It's pretty interesting.
We work with a bunch of nurses on a day-to-day basis. There's not a tougher crowd out there than a nurse who's coming off of a 12-hour shift.
Sure.
Especially now.
Yeah,
And
and giving people that slack, when they're coming out of. My daughter was coming out of like a horrible day of school. She doesn't want to be in school right now. She just her first year of high school, COVID, blah blah blah. She did so well. She did so well. Didn't have to try in middle school, and then here she is in high school, and it's just she's got to work now, right? And she's not happy about it, and she's having to deal with this. Well, of course she's not going to be in the best of moods when I pick her up from the bus stop. Well, neither is a nurse, and allowing that extra patience and that extra slack, and saying, I get it. I would be. I even said this to her yesterday. I'd feel the exact same way if I were you. I'd be probably acting the same way, and it's true.
Yeah. Does anyone have any other questions? Although Dr. Alexakis has said that he will stay on, anyone who has to leave, we completely understand. We always try to be respectful of your time. Everyone's time is very important to them. So if you have places you need to go and things that you need to do, we completely understand if you want to leave the meeting. If people have questions, by all means, you can stay on. Again, it was so wonderful talking to everyone this evening. I think we may have to get George back again at some point.
Okay.
Yeah, it would
be an honor to do it again. Sure.
Yeah, wonderful presentation. We do have another webinar planned. It is January. I gotta look through my papers. I believe it is January 27th. So we're kind of taking the month of December. As we know, everyone kind of does their own thing then. So I do, on behalf of Myra, the co-chair for the educational committee, with myself, I do want to wish everyone happy holidays, a happy Thanksgiving, and please keep healthy and please keep in touch with us.
You too.
Yeah, and great seeing everyone and hearing from everyone. And Myra, I don't know if you have anything that you need to add housekeeping wise either here.
No, I think you covered it all. Just inviting everybody back every month for whatever it is that we're doing. Every month we're doing something different.
Yeah, well, thank you, everyone. And again, if anyone has questions, you can feel free to stay on. We'll stay on for a little bit. Everyone else, feel free to just jump out of the call.
I know Nikki did pose a couple of comments. She did say that she loved that you talked about reimagining things during these unforeseen times, and that you talked about the joys of volunteering. Yeah. I know DC folks do a great job of volunteering all the time. And I know all the chapters do as well, but I wanted to mention that in particular about Nikki.
I still do it. I mean, I'm a busy person.
I really appreciate it.
Go ahead, Nikki.
I'm sorry. I really, really, really enjoyed this presentation. I hopped on late because I work at a hospital, and it's Myra and a lot of the other hospital. Wonderful members of the NCA. No, that's not a normal life. You plan to get off of work at 5 o'clock and you're still traveling or trying to get off at 7. So I really, really, really enjoyed this presentation. And anytime I hear about, volunteering and self-care and reimagining, there were so many amazing keywords that just like totally sparked my interest. I will say I worked really closely. I work at a children's hospital in Washington, D.C. And I was recently speaking with one of my coworkers, and she was like, what's one of the best compliments that you've got? And I was like, this is going to sound weird. I say, but a lot of my families always say, thank you so much, Miss Nikki, for everything you've done for us, but we hope we never have to see you again. And I know that And her team can really, understand why that was being said. And she said, and what do you say to them? And I was like, well, my response is, well, if you do have to come back again, you know that I'm here to help you guys navigate through this entire process. So again, thank you so much for this amazing presentation. I took so much away from it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Just what the doctor ordered at a time like this. So thank you.
I'm so happy to hear that. I just thought of something. I talked earlier about people who are furloughed or out of work. I've encouraged a friend of mine who's in the event industry. Those people are really suffering right now and will for at least the next year. I'm telling him, get out of that industry altogether. Essentially you're a salesperson. He's at a very high level, at an executive level. And I'm encouraging him to not only do some retraining, get his project management certification, but also join an association. Join an association or do volunteer work, get on a board. These are ways people find jobs. There's hardly any front doors anymore, it seems. In virtually every field in every sector. There's like side doors and back doors, but very few front doors anymore. So these are the side doors and back doors, boards, associations. So that might be part of your recruitment campaign for getting more people into this association. And asking people, hey, would you consider it? And I don't know what your dues are, but it might be worth it. If you pay $1,000 to be an association, but then you get a job out of it, what's $1,000? So
Great.
just a thought.
Good thought. It's a good thought. This is Anthony again. I just was able to pull over so I can talk. So I'm the one that made a comment about the personal check-in with the couch. I think it's a great idea. And to make a side note to what you were talking about, Chicago here was popular as what's called the Nordstrom check-in. So if you ever notice, whenever you shop at Nordstrom at a register, the salesperson will come around and hand you their bag. So a lot of hotels in Chicago had adopted that at check-in. So after you checked in, got the credit card, blah, 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 walk around the desk if you can, and hand the keys to the guest personally. I mean, COVID-19 right now, I can't do it right now, but just that service, either you'll hand them the keys or you walk them to the elevator, make sure they get on the right elevator, get to their room. So like I said, just those little things like that, I think is a great way to heighten their experience. So.
Yeah, I have a friend, Dean Picciarello. He's a wealth management advisor, is a founding partner of his firm, does very, very well, travels a lot. And during the week when he travels, he stays at a Ritz or a Fairmont, usually upper end hotels. When he loves the keyless entry, he doesn't even want to go anywhere near that front desk. He's traveling, he's there to work. There's not a whole lot of spare time. He just wants to go to his room, answer some emails, rest up because he's got a meeting in the morning.
Digital check-in. Yeah.
Yeah, like just keyless, right? But he goes, I go to the same hotels on the weekends sometimes with my family. At that time, I want to go to the front desk, linger, drink the cheap champagne, and just enjoy the experience. Same hotel, same guy, two totally different experiences that he's seeking, and the idea that people do want that sometimes, and they want something, and it's just knowing what your guest wants. And here's the same person wanting two different experiences at the same hotel. It's just amazing.
Great. Thank you so much for doing this today. Very, very educational.
My pleasure. It's a real honor to do this, actually. I mean, usually I talk to people about this sort of thing and they don't have a clue, but you guys, I mean, it's actually much more challenging to do this and that's why I wanted to dry run it with Brenda, because it's much more of a challenge. I have a whole step by step on how to do a service recovery, et cetera. You guys don't need that. I think it was a higher level to assist you with maybe training others to do this sort of thing, plus
We
all
are
the
the
step-by-steps.
service recovery.
Yeah. But we train people all the time. I mean, I had a mentor once that told me I was dissatisfied with the amount and the kind of hours I had at a particular job. And he says, do whatever they want at first, but then slowly start doing the things that you want to do slowly. And if you do it slowly enough, they won't even notice. You train your bosses as well, he said. And then he cited Peter Senge's boil frog parable because he was an academic. But nonetheless, I think that so much of this it doesn't come to their attention. I mean, stuff that's it's just common sense to you is not common sense to people, 1 or 2 or 3 levels above you. And I would argue that the higher above you they are, the less that they get it. It's amazing to me some of the conversations I've had with so-called executives. It is incredible to me. Like some people all but say, if it wasn't for those pesky employees and those bothersome customers, this would be a great place to work. It's amazing. It's stunning. So Tony's inviting me to DC. I like that. I'm going to take you up on that, Tony.
Absolutely. We would love to have you.
Me too.
It's, I have a real fondness for DC. It used to be the head office of the consulting firm I used to work at. I think they're still there, Senior Little International. They're the largest hospitality consulting firm in the country, and I worked for them for about 2 years before I got into teaching, many years ago.
Where in DC?
They're in well, actually they're in Rockville, Maryland. They were in DC for a while. Yeah. But yeah, it was I learned so much for working from with them, and they do a lot of the kitchen battery designs of all the the in-flight at different all over the world, really, for in-flight kitchens for airlines, wherever you see food service, they're there. And I was a business consultant for them, where I actually did operations audits and feasibility studies and that sort of thing for a couple of years, after you got out of college. It was a great job to have.
George, you said something that I thought was really important that Myra and I were actually discussing the other day, and that is, given that there's a lot of concierges affected by COVID and out of work, essentially, what angle or approach could we take as outreach to assist them, which creates membership?
Well, Myra's got a job in a field that's thriving right now because of COVID, right? You guys can all use your skills in a hospital. We've got senior living centers here. They're using concierges left, right, and center. Some of these places are outstandingly beautiful. The Terraces or Moorings Park. I mean, they got chapels, they've got wellness centers. I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of money. Tell them to come down here.
I was thinking from the association standpoint.
Well, from the association standpoint, you don't have to necessarily approach. I mean, you can approach concierge directly, but I think you can also approach the higher ups, in different places that have concierge or people like that, like, maybe they're recreation coordinators of a private club or what have you, and approach the GM, people at the top and say, look, we're an association that can kind of fast track your level of service in a way that, other places can't, because we're all committed to this. And also explaining a little bit about what Ed Staros was explaining to me today. It was pretty interesting, because as a teacher and a trainer, to me, it's a calling. I mean, if I stayed in operations, I would have been retired 10 years ago, probably, right? I mean, the restaurant that we sold still is doing phenomenally. But I chose this not obviously because of the money, but more because it was a calling for me. And and when he was talking about the concierges that he's known over the years, he talked about it in the same way, that he likened it to a maitre d' in Paris, or these people who they love what they do. There's intrinsic rewards inherent in the job. They don't want to be GMs. They don't want. He was warning me. He's like, don't talk about career advancement, because they may not want that. And I can tell you that I've passed up 1, 2, maybe 3. I've lost count now. So-called promotions to be the director of actually the existing hospitality program that I'm in. I was asked for that. I was asked to be an associate dean at the previous institution I was at. And in both cases, I considered what people said. I sat down, I kept my mouth shut until they made me an offer. And I said, I'll get back to you, kind of thing. And I said no to all 3. Why? Because I love what I do. I love being a trainer. I love being a teacher. I love doing what I do. Why would I give that up for something that I won't like as much? I won't love, So I think this piece needs to be explained to GMs. And I think once that's explained, then they're more likely to encourage the the events coordinator or whoever it is. It's not just concierges, but I think I would send, if I was a GM of a private club that was a very high end, I'd send my sommelier to be an association, a member of your association. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like Gray Oaks down here, they've got a sommelier. A lot of different places have them. If any of these recreation coordinators of private clubs or hotels, I'd get them in this association ASAP. Absolutely. And as long, and I was telling Brenda, students as well, especially at the master's level, but even at the undergraduate level, a lot of them are out of work now. Now's a great time to, now they've got the time to do this. Now's the time to do professional development. Now's the time to join association and perhaps get a job. I'd be knocking on Myra's door if I was in DC. Hey, do you need another concierge there? Or do you know another hospital that needs a concierge? This is a great time to recruit for your organization, for your association, really.
Yeah, that was my feeling in listening to your presentation for the second time tonight. First time I was like, oh, it's all about, work. I was thinking about work, but the second time I'm thinking, we have some members of the education board who are on this chat tonight. We need to take this information and bring it to other people that we know, who can help grow our organization, and then we in turn can help them grow. It's a win-win for everyone.
The other thing you might consider is, one of the best, if not the best association I've ever dealt with is the Club Managers Association of America. They're so generous. They've got different prices for different people. So students, they charge $50 for a student, because until they graduate, and then they pay the full price. But
we do have
we have a student rate also.
Yes.
Well,
you know what? Students. Nobody.
We have one. We have one.
Find them.
Well, you know what? If you can put together something, I can get it to our internship coordinator who places our students, but there are internship coordinators all over the country. There's 800 hospitality programs in this country. I think you can get a lot of students involved in your association. I mean, what student wouldn't have benefited from tonight? I mean, this is the stuff that it's a little bit above what I teach in the classroom a lot of the times, unless it's at the graduate level. But, just to be around you guys, right? And especially if they're in between jobs or they got furloughed or whatever. I mean, interacting with different, it's a fantastic thing. I know for me, I got into associations at a very young age, thanks to my father, who owned the restaurants. And I'll tell you, I learned so much. And I tell my students this, when you join association, you're the youngest person there. All these so-called old people, like people older than 25, those people.
Boy, are we in trouble.
Yeah. So when you're 18, 25 seems old. And so they'll take you under, their wing. They'll treat you like a grandchild or a son or a daughter or whatever, and it was a wonderful feeling. It was great that I looked even younger than my years back. It's genetic, but nonetheless, because they really took care of me. Any association I joined, it was just really wonderful, to be mentored and just felt like felt special, because you're like the only one who's of that age group and everyone else isn't.
Right. And on the flip side, we gain so much from it too, because then as an organization, we find out what it is that they are looking for, and how to attract more members through their eyes. What they're looking for in an organization.
Yeah. That I'll tell you right now, guys, I've been like for 10 years, I've been teaching for 25 years, but this is the first, this job I've exclusively taught 18 to 21-year-olds. Before that, I was teaching adults like you guys, from when I was in my, early 30s. And this is probably the most misunderstood group, the millennials and now Gen Z. They're really a misunderstood group by the rest of us. And I actually went out and did research when I first took this job in 2008. And I was stunned and surprised to see what what really goes on in their minds and why they do certain things. You know, like I'll give you just one example. This idea of asking questions. You ever notice how they don't come to your office and ask questions, or, you know, um, it's not because they think they know they think they know everything. That's not it at all. It's because that they grew up at a time when you didn't do that. You simply did a web search. And if you go to a website called justeffinggoogleit.com, it's just one single page. It take you 30 seconds to read. You'll get what I'm talking about. You spell the F word correctly. And it's really like, to them, it's like they're it's a nuisance to ask you guys a question. They think that they're bothering you when they can just Google it, at a time when, you know, both young men and women were told, you know, be independent, latchkey kids, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Here's the internet. They've got all their answers. They don't need to ask anybody. They don't call anybody. They need advice. It's all there, or at least they think it's all there. And I share that with them about how it comes across, that it comes across as you're arrogant and you think you know everything. I say, I know it's not true because I've worked with you guys long enough, but every once in a while, like once a week at least, go into your boss's office, ask a question. You know, so it's a misunderstood, and that's just one example, but there's other examples of how they're misunderstood, and their intentions and their motives and why they do things are misunderstood by people that are older than them. You know, so the millennials and now Gen Z, they're different too. I did a whole presentation on communication and dynamic communication and interpersonal effectiveness that we offer at the university now as a self-paced online program, so that there's no professor or anything like that. And this is not for students. This is for people like you guys as professionals. I think they charge about $100, but they had me do one on this, on communication, interpersonal skills. And I go through the different generations about how, you know, you know, because we here in Florida, especially, we got veterans that are still working, you know, people in their 80s still working. And we have, you know, all the different generations, you know, the veterans, the baby boomers, the X, Y, Z. And I go through, I think, about at least 3 or 4 slides, maybe more, on this topic, because it's a lot of misunderstanding among the groups. Yet the core values are the same, believe it or not. It's interesting stuff. Yeah, I forgot to mention that, Brenda. I did it a few months ago, and they're offering it up. It's not a degree seeking type thing. It's just, and it takes about 5. I don't know how long it would take, but I can't imagine it takes that long. It's and you get a little certificate on communication or whatever it is if you do mine, and then there's other ones on entrepreneurship. There's all kinds of different ones. There's even one on spa management. It's pretty interesting.
Interesting, yeah.
Would there be any other questions or comments before we wrap it up? I did say I'd stay until everyone was done asking questions. That's what I always do.
We're testing you.
It's me being, it's the concierge in me.
That's right.
Well,
Thank you
think,
very much.
yeah,
Pleasure.
thank you. It was a wonderful presentation. And again, thank you everyone who stayed on and got to hear that little bit more. I believe that this is going to be available online as well.
In the members only section.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah.
And Brenda, if I could,
yes.
Thank you to you and Myra. This is wonderful. You guys are doing such an amazing job with our educational program. And
amazing.
Take my hat off to you.
Thank you. We you know, we want to do what's best for everyone and try to have some varied topics. And yeah, I'm glad that you guys enjoyed it. And Myra and I are going to keep coming up with ideas.
And we have Matthew and Anthony on the call, who are also on the committee, and Fred, who are on the education committee.
Well done. Well done.
Thank you, team.
Go team.
We are a team. We're a great team.
Nice. Well, I'm going to say at this time, I think we have covered just about every topic we could this evening without intruding too much into your evening. George, again, thank you so much. And I look forward to hearing more from you and see what we can do with NCA and the university.
Absolutely. Pleasure was mine.
Thanks again.
Thank you
night.
so much.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Guys, and good night.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Brenda, do you still need me?